Okay, video about setting up your XH1 for sports. Obviously, the first thing you do, you're going to set this on high, continuous high. You're going to set this on boost. You're going to set the focus on the front of the camera to continuous, because what you're shooting, sports, is continuous action. Okay, I'm going to fold the screen out here, hopefully. Oh, there we go. A bird I shot. Very pretty. Okay, into the settings. Let's get that centered. Okay, so for deadline stuff, I obviously can't shoot RAW, so I shoot JPEG, fine quality. If it's a sports event that I'm shooting and I have the time, maybe I'll shoot RAW, but frankly, I don't need the files that big for newspaper work. I'm going to be shooting film simulation as standard, and I'm not going to change really any of those settings because this is not art we're shooting. This is journalism. This is sports. If you're into doing film simulations for your sports work, God bless. That ain't me. Obviously, no grain effect. Dynamic range, we want that as wide as possible. Dynamic range priority off. White balance. I use auto. It's good enough, but frankly, you probably should use either sun if it's sunny, or you should use cloudy if it's cloudy. Duh. I actually do have the shadow tone brought down a little bit, so it opens up the shadows just a tiny little bit in JPEG. I process in Photoshop. I use Photoshop 6, not CS, not Lightroom. I'm old school. I have the software. I don't like renting software. I think it's ridiculous. Buy software, use software. None of the rest of this matters. Okay, autofocus. This is obviously critical. So I have back button autofocus set, and when you're shooting sports, almost quite a bit of the time, you want to keep your subject in the middle of the frame, because that allows you to get more. If the middle of your frame is in focus, like someone running at you, or someone swimming, or a batter, or something like that, then the chance of you, if you keep it in the middle, something coming into the frame from some other side, it's there. So you probably, for my personal taste, you want this focus point to be fixed. I use the center, I might actually try move it out a tiny little bit. You don't want it on this box, and I'll tell you why. This is phase autofocus, not contrast detect autofocus like a DSLR. So I think you want to give the center a little more room to choose the autofocus point. In a DSLR, I've done, the smallest box you can, just because in the Canon stuff that I used to use, the focus point, the only one that I found that was reliable was the center smallest focus point. So this, I'm going to move this up just to there. Why not? Let's try that today. Who knows? Thankfully, it came back to the right screen. Obviously, you're going to be on AFC. Once there's a lens on here, there's no lens on here. Okay, now this is going to be your own personal preference, quite frankly. I've tried multi-purpose when I first got this. I didn't find it worked very well for football. For baseball, I tend to, if I'm using baseball is different because you have a diamond. You know where action is going to be. Most of the time it's going to be at one of the 4 points, basically in that square. So you can pre-focus with a back button and then wait for the action to come into it and then push the button. For things that need to track, like I found this setting works really good for shooting radio-controlled cars, like I've shot fairly recently. The focus pops really fast. Sensitivity tracking is obviously the whole way up, and our speed tracking sensitivity is the whole way up. Tracking sensitivity is in the middle. I had an issue with this the last day game I shot. It didn't seem to want to pick up the action as quickly as possible. I don't really know why. But for the XH1 and probably for the Fuji system in general, I found that these settings are just absolutely critical. And if the setting is wrong, it makes a world of difference. I wasn't expecting it to make that much difference, but it does. So for your shooting style, and I know this may not be very helpful, for your shooting style, you're going to have to figure this out for yourself, okay? I still play with this most of the time today. I'm shooting a football game today. I'm going to leave it on number 3. Store AF, no, we don't care about that. AF point display, yes, I want to see where it is. I don't know why you would have it on 91. That doesn't make any freaking sense to me. AF illuminator off, we don't care about that. We want that off. We want that on peaking. We're not doing manual focus, so whatever. I have all these set. Instant AF, I have that to AF single. And pixel, shutter release, priority selection, release, yes. That's how I have this set. I have and you can see I'm touching it and nothing's happening. I have a screen protector on here. I hate touch screens because I want my settings set. I don't want my nose to change them when I'm shooting. And I don't know how, if you're shooting action, you can be monkeying around with the touch screen on the back of the camera. The action is so fast in front of you. Set the camera. If you need to change something, but just let it go after that, for goodness sakes. Drive setting. We don't care about bracket setting. Obviously, you're going to set this as fast as possible. Now, with this camera, on mechanical shutter, this is as high as I can set it. We're shooting action here, so let's go as fast as possible, shall we? Obviously, your self-timer is off. Your interval is off. Your shutter type is mechanical shutter, obviously. If you shoot electronic shutter, yeah, you can maybe get this camera to shoot a little faster, but the electronic shutter does wonky things to pictures sometimes, and you don't want that. Flicker reduction. For night games under really terrible, like I think they're sodium vapor lights, like is fairly common for high school sports. You can try this on, but it really slows the frame rate down quite a bit. So I leave it off. Auto ISO, I'm controlling my ISO. Generally speaking, sports are under constant light situation, so I don't know why you want anything other than to set all of your parameters, the exposure triangle, your ISO, your shutter speed, and your aperture. All those things are going to remain fairly constant if light is going to remain fairly constant. Now, I had this set to image stabilization. It's pointless with sports because you're going to be just draining the battery down. Something moving like fast, like a runner or someone with a football or a soccer ball or whatever, IS isn't going to help you a goddamn bit. I don't know that this really matters. I'm going to be shooting telephoto, so I just have that set to that. Wireless communication. Yeah, good luck getting their app to work these days. We're not shooting flash. We're not shooting video. I don't nearly never do that. All the rest of this stuff, this is how you format your card if you don't already know that. All the rest of this stuff is set because I do want to record. I do want that information set for me. The sound, we don't care about any issues with. This is not a quiet sport. Like you might want to set that, change the sounds if you're going to be shooting. If you're going to be shooting golf or tennis, I can see where you would actually really. This would be a big help, and I think that's where mirrorless cameras, frankly, excel over regular DSLRs. Touchscreen. We don't care about the touchscreen. We're professional photographers here. And sports, it's you want to set this, and you're done with it. Dial setting. Okay. This is how I have my settings. And you can see here, ISO, blah, blah, blah. That's all that set. Shutter AF, we want that off and off. Because we're back button focusing here, not on the shutter, folks. You want to be able to focus and take pictures while your subject is moving through, not when, it's just going to be constantly focusing. You want that independent, in my humble opinion. Shutter AE, this is how I have that set. You can check that if you want. I always have this to shoot without lens. I probably should not have this set to shoot without card, because frankly, I don't need it to shoot without a card. I do need to shoot it without a lens if I'm adapting a lens or an off-brand lens to the camera. There's no reason to have that off, as far as I'm concerned. Focus ring, I set that to, I never manually focus. So there you go. Focus ring, blah, blah, blah. That's how I have those set. That's that set. And what else? Power management. Okay, power off, 2 minutes. Sure, why not? The data, yeah, okay. Good luck with that as well. Connection setting doesn't really matter, because their Bluetooth, their connection settings are kind of garbage now. So hopefully they get that fixed, and you won't need to worry about that. What else? Top of the camera. This is one of the things I love about the XH1. It's got a real freaking grip that you can hold on to. If you want to hold on to it and kind of, you kind of dangle this off of your fingers. I have really small hands. See, look, really small hands. And I really love the grip on this camera. The XT series, the grip is just frankly not big enough. It is uncomfortable to try. I borrowed an XT3 from Fujifilm, and I liked a lot about the camera, but I think it's just too small. I don't know why they don't go to a bigger grip for a Pro Series camera like the H line. Yes, it's going to be continued. Let's stop with all this frantic, breathless talk about how they're discontinuing it just because they bring out another XT series camera. God, it's so boring, guys. Okay, the light. Obviously, we're shooting in daylight tonight. What else do we set here? One of the things that is really good about Fujifilm that I've gotten used to it now, and I really do like this. I like the buttons on top and the fact that you can lock it. So under constant light situation today, probably, I'm going to be using the 50 to 140 and the 1.4. So my maximum aperture is going to be f4. Obviously, I'm not going to stop it down anymore. You want to isolate your subject as much as possible. That's why sports photographers, pro photographers, basically won't consider a lens if it's anything slower. The aperture is slower than f4. There's just simply too much depth of field in your picture. You want to isolate your subject as much as humanly possible. So for daylight, you want to keep this low as humanly possible. For nighttime sports, I've been up as high as 6400, and even with this chip, there is nearly no noise on an uncropped image at 6400 if it's properly exposed. So, this is something until fairly recently, you were never able to go up that high on a DSLR. My Canon gear, I have a 6D and my wife has an 80D. And even on the 60 on full frame, if I was at 3200, I started to sweat about the noise I was getting. At 6400 on this camera, on the XH1, there's barely any noise at all on a properly exposed image. So I have no problem going up to 6400. I've never gone much higher than that, but anyway. So for a day game like I'm shooting today, obviously, you want to take advantage of the quality that you got. So you want this as low as possible. I'm going to try to stay below 400 ISO. And the great thing is you lock it. I think that's fantastic. Now for sports, if you're not a sports photographer or you have limited sports experience, this might be news to you. If you're using a flash, you want to set this as high as possible to the X number, and you'll stop action then with a flash. Motion stopping shutter speed, full stop, is no less than 500th of a second. If you're panning with it like a car or something with motorsports, you can maybe get away with lower shutter speed. But if you're stopping a runner of any type, any sport, you're going to have to do this at 500th of a second. If you want to go up to 1,000th of a second or 2,000th of a second, if you can, that's fantastic. But no less than 500th of a second. And then with this camera, again, it looks like it's going to be pretty sunny out today and very clear. So once I get my exposure set, if I'm on the same side of the field as the play and the sun is behind me, or if I choose to shoot into the sun, the light is going to be constant. So you might as well just set this and lock it. And then no amount of walking around, these dials are not going to change. That's the one problem I have with this system. I really don't like this switch, because as you're walking along and, it's brushing against your bag or your shoulder or sorry, your waist, your jeans or whatever, this is really, I've found this all the time. This gets switched. I really wish that was internal. The other thing, I do like the switch on the front, and I know Nikon have done this for years with the switch on the front. Just put this inside, for God's sake. I mean, come on, guys. I nearly never find myself needing to switch back and forth on the fly between focus modes. If I'm just shooting something that's going to be static, like, non-sports, like if I'm shooting a still life, if I'm shooting pictures of slot cars, just shoot it in manual focus and it'll still autofocus. You push the back button, it still autofocuses. If it's anything moving, and again, I have the shutter release and the focus on different places, so that in effect gives me single shot autofocus on continuous, because I push the button when I want to expose, and I push this button when I want to focus. So that makes this pretty much irrelevant. And all you can do then is you can bump it, and if you want it to continuously autofocus, that's a problem. Okay, so I know this was going to be a thing about settings, so I won't go into more ergonomics about the camera. But generally speaking, I mean, those are the settings I use, and there you go. So I hope this has helped. And if you have any questions, please leave them down below, and I'll answer them if I can. I'm not claiming to be, this great Fuji guru, and every possible setting I have is absolutely right. But this is what I've found, kind of getting my way through the system. And there was one more and I forget where it is. It's, it's down here. Excuse me. It is screen setup. And this is pretty important. Okay, you want live view on. That makes the AF faster. Auto rotate. Yeah, this is actually pretty important. I should have done this before. Display setting. Okay, yeah, so that's what's shown inside the viewfinder. This is what I have set. I mean, this isn't necessarily crucial for sports. But anyway, so this is what I have set to display inside the viewfinder or on the back of the camera, however you do it. Focus doesn't really matter. Auto guide doesn't really matter. Yeah, so this is what I have set background. That's the screen on the top of the camera. Where was it's like displaying the pictures after you've shot them. Oh, image display. This is important. This is the interframe image. It's showing you a preview of every frame that you take before it takes the next picture. This is gonna speed your camera up a lot. You turn this to off, and that way you're not seeing every picture. You can chimp later. You can look at the pictures later. Don't look at them while you're shooting. You don't need the frame. When you take a picture, you don't need to see it and then take another picture and then see it and then take another picture if you're shooting sports. You just shoot. Look at the pictures afterwards. So that's important. You want that off. And like I said, you want live view to off as well. Or natural view to on. Sorry. And custom display settings. No, that wasn't it. Yeah, the rest of it isn't necessarily crucial. Sub monitor, yeah, whatever. Yeah, so okay, and that's how I have that set. That's not necessarily crucial for sports. Anyway, so yeah, I mean there you go. That's pretty much how I have the camera set up. Focus area, I don't really change that. Command dial. Yeah, my aperture's on the front. I don't really change that. So the rest of it, uh, the AF issue, the AF settings. This is going to be really your own personal choice. You're going to need to fool with it and see what you like. And there you go. I hope this has helped everybody out who might have a question about how to shoot the XH1 for sports. This is a really great sports camera. There aren't that many people that do shoot sports with it because I think haven't been a lot of early adopters. We're still fairly early in the Fuji mirrorless system. There's nearly no long glass for sports work. There's a 200 f2. I have a 300-2.8 Canon, but that's years old, and I frankly just don't have the money to buy the new Fuji 200 f2. It's like $6,000, which is just absolutely ridiculous. So I shoot everything with the 50 to 140 and the 1.4, and for now that's all we got. If we had a 200 2.8, that would be good enough length because that gets you to 300 2.8 on a crop sensor. So that would be good enough for most sports. If we had something in between 2 and 400, or yeah, between 2 and 400 that was a 2.8, that would be great. Even a 300 f4 would be adequate. Not great, but adequate. It would be fairly cheap. Fairly cheap. It would be like $1,000, hopefully no more. And at the moment, there just isn't a lot of people that I've found shooting sports with this camera. So that's why I figured I'd do the settings, and I hope you all found it informative.